Nationwide protests over police brutality have highlighted social injustices present in this country, one of which relates to the climate crisis. CBS News meteorologist and climate specialist Jeff Berardelli spoke to one resident fighting for change in a place known as Cancer Alley.
We were proud. We are still, but we have just been beat down. The people are devastated.
Robert Taylor knows all about environmental injustice. He's lived in the small town of Reserve, Louisiana, population 10,000, his entire life. And while it may have a small population, it has an outsized reputation for having one of the highest risks of cancer in the nation.
Well, I lost my mother to this. My wife is a cancer survivor. I lost nephews, uncles, neighbors. I don't think anybody's life is worth a job.
Reserve lies in the heart of what's called Cancer Alley. It's a corridor 85 miles long in between New Orleans and Baton Rouge, dominated by more than 150 chemical plants.
There are a number of studies that show that the primary predictor of where toxic waste site will be sited is a community of color and secondarily a low-income community.
For the past 32 years, Peggy Shepard has been leading We Act, an environmental justice advocacy organization. They empower and organize low-income people of color to build healthy communities. She says big business and government often take advantage of these communities because they're an easier target.
Environmental racism is the intentional targeting of pollution in communities of color and low income because they are less informed, they vote less, they have less political clout. Often land is cheaper in those communities as well.
Jamie Margolin agrees. She's the founder of Zero Hour. It's a movement that educates and organizes young people on climate and environmental justice.
Pipelines aren't built through Beverly Hills. They're built through indigenous reservations, and all of this is purposeful.
And back in Reserve, Louisiana, residents have been exposed to an unwelcome environmental threat for 5 decades. A giant neoprene facility just down the road from Taylor's house.
Since the first days of operation of this chemical plant, it was unjust. We had no say-so on whether they were going to set this behemoth right in our community, right on top of us.
And the census tract where he lives, it actually has a cancer risk 50 times above average. That is according to the EPA. It's the highest risk in America. Taylor blames the plant. Formerly owned by DuPont until 2015, the Denka plant has been emitting the toxic chemical chloroprene for decades. It's classified as a likely human carcinogen by the EPA.
But EPA set what they call a recommended safe level, and these people are nowhere near it and have no intentions of trying to adhere to that.
While EPA sets recommendations, they leave it up to the individual states to establish a formal legal limit. Louisiana still hasn't. However, due to pressure by community groups and lawsuits, Denka entered into an agreement with Louisiana in 2017 to reduce its emissions by 85%. And just last month, the state certified that the plant met those requirements. But despite that, Taylor says these new emissions are still far above EPA recommended safe levels, accusing the state and the EPA of failing to protect his community.
Why don't they stop them? And they said they can't stop them. He said that's only a suggestion. How could that, you mean to tell me the United States government cannot protect its citizens?
Shepard says it's common for environmental enforcement to be more lax in low-income communities. That's why it is vital that environmental equality start much earlier by giving residents a seat at the table.
If people of color and low income who are most affected by the issues are never in the rooms where the decisions are being made and the solutions being recommended, we are going to continue to have 2 different worlds, 2 different realities.
Climate action and social justice are inseparable. Both are needed. You can't properly solve the climate crisis without addressing the societal, social, and racial intersections.
And increasingly, lawmakers are heeding this call with proposals that pair climate action with social justice, a centerpiece of the Green New Deal. It's an ambitious Democratic plan of social and economic reforms to tackle the climate challenge.
Climate change is going to to change every sector of our economy and our lives. And if we are not all part of those solutions, we are going to continue the divisions that we currently have.
And these divisions for people like Taylor and his family may literally be the difference between life and death.
I do not want my grandchildren and great-grandchildren growing up in that poison. They're not going to live.
Jeff Baradelli, CBS News.